There has been some very, very shocking news about missing girl Summer Wells. Apparently, Summer was sold because her father had a huge drug debt. I'm hoping and I'm praying that this isn't true, but sadly, I do feel that it could be. A man called DJ Smith has apparently told Ziggy's husband, Fred, that Don owed somebody this massive amount of money and Summer was taken as collateral because the debt wasn't paid off. And apparently, Summer was supposed to be transferred to these people on the 13th of June 2021. But because Don and Candace were allegedly told that Child Protection Services were due to visit them on the 14th, Summer wasn't handed over until the 15th. This is awful, and one of the most plausible and biggest theories that people have always believed about Summer Wells is that she was sold by her parents. I have to say, I've always felt that perhaps there was a tragic accident that was covered up by Summer's parents, but I did always feel that Summer being sold was certainly possible. And if Summer really was sold because Don owed all this money for drugs, was she supposed to be returned to her parents if they paid off the debt? But then Summer's case becomes so huge and so high profile, maybe that's why she was never returned. Or was it just that Don could never pay off the debt? This is so disturbing, and did you hear this news in the last day? I have to say it's blown my mind, and it's really upset me to think that Summer could have been sold because of Don's stupidity.
At the center of a story already heavy with sorrow and unanswered questions is a claim so stark it forces everyone who hears it to pause. An allegation circulating among online communities and private conversations says that 5-year-old Summer Wells was sold, some claim, as collateral to settle a large drug debt her father allegedly owed. That allegation, if true, would reshape the investigation from a missing child search into a potential trafficking and criminal conspiracy probe. It is also, and crucially, unverified. Before we begin, a quick practical note for anyone following this channel. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive only verified updates and official appeals tied to this investigation. When allegations this serious circulate, it's more important than ever to rely on confirmed information and to pass anything concrete to law enforcement rather than amplifying raw claims on social media. What is being alleged, and where the claim appears to come from, can be stated plainly and carefully. The story as it has circulated points to a man identified online as DJ Smith, who allegedly told a local contact, named in the chatter as Fred, that Summer's father owed a large drug debt. The allegation claims that a transfer of Summer was originally planned for June 13, 2021, but delayed because the parents were warned that Child Protective Services might visit the home on June 14th. According to the narrative now spreading, the transfer ultimately occurred on June 15, 2021, after that warning. The suggestion in these accounts is that the child was used as collateral, a human guarantee that the debt would be satisfied, and that she would be returned if or when the debt was paid. That sequence of specific dates is what gives the allegation its apparent testability. A date range narrows investigative steps, phone records, location data, interviews with the named intermediaries, and any documented communications between the alleged participants can be checked. But testability is not the same as proof, and we must treat these claims with the caution they demand. At the time of this report, authorities have not publicly corroborated the allegation that Summer was sold or transferred as collateral. No arrest has been announced linked to such a transaction, and no physical evidence has been publicly disclosed that would verify the claim. Because the accusation is so serious, it raises immediate legal and ethical issues. If true, the allegation would constitute child trafficking, which is among the gravest crimes investigators can pursue and carries federal as well as state penalties. If false, the allegation would still cause enormous harm. It would re-traumatize the family, divert investigative resources, and could wrongly intimidate or endanger people named publicly. That is why journalists, investigators, and responsible community leaders must make a clear distinction between reporting the existence of a claim and asserting its truth. How investigators treat a claim like this is instructive. The first requirement is documentation: who said what, to whom, and when. A credible claim needs named, reachable sources who can provide sworn statements, phone or messaging logs, or other corroborating evidence. Investigators will typically want to interview the person who claims to have spoken with DJ Smith, examine the purported intermediary's contact lists, seek digital trails that might place named individuals at specific locations on the listed dates, and look for transactional evidence, payments, communications mentioning a debt, vehicle records, or property access logs. In parallel, law enforcement would assess whether the persons discussed have criminal histories or ties to trafficking networks, and whether the geographic movements described are consistent with known activity. Because the allegation involves other named figures, DJ Smith, Fred, and references to parents warned of a June 14th CPS visit, responsibility also falls on local and federal agencies to separate rumor from evidence. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, local sheriffs, and any involved federal partners would need to coordinate carefully. When community tips point to specific places or dates, they can be invaluable, but they must be handled with formal investigative steps. Preserve digital messages, obtain search warrants if there is probable cause, deploy forensic teams where necessary, and maintain a strict chain of custody for any evidence recovered. Another dimension of this allegation is motive and plausibility. The idea of a child being used as collateral presumes both desperation and a willingness among adult participants to put a child at risk in ways that create extreme legal jeopardy. It also presumes a network or pipeline willing to accept a child in exchange for debt repayment, an allegation that, if factual, rises to organized criminal behavior, not isolated misconduct. Experts in child trafficking note that while children are sometimes coerced, sold, or exploited in trafficking networks, the specific scenarios and mechanisms vary widely. Investigators must therefore avoid simplistic assumptions and instead pursue forensic corroboration. Public reaction to claims like this is intensely emotional and often immediate. Shock, anger, and grief sweep through the community and online audiences. That reaction explains why these allegations spread fast and why they demand urgent, visible response from authorities. People want reassurance that the claim is being taken seriously and that proper steps are being taken to validate or refute it. But the rush to judge or to act outside legal channels can be dangerous. Public attempts to investigate, from vigilante searches to doxing unnamed people, can interfere with evidence, intimidate witnesses, and expose well-meaning civilians to legal risk. The most helpful public response, until investigators report concrete actions, is to preserve information. Keep screenshots of direct messages, note timestamps, and bring any verifiable lead to law enforcement rather than amplifying speculation online. At the same time, the community's appetite for answers underscores a practical truth about the modern information environment. Unverified stories find audiences more quickly than confirmed facts. Social platforms reward sensational claims with attention, and that encourages repetition and embellishment. Responsible journalism and public discussion, by contrast, must prioritize verification. That means reporters and creators who cover the case should label the allegation clearly as unconfirmed, attribute the claim precisely, and avoid repeating lurid details that cannot be substantiated. It also means reminding viewers that only a formal investigation, with subpoenas, interviews under oath, forensic tests, and cross-checks of digital evidence, can translate an allegation into provable fact. There are also legal protections and risks to consider. Publicly accusing specific people of trafficking without evidence can be defamatory. Families suffering under suspicion are also vulnerable to harassment and reputational damage. For that reason, even while reporting the existence of an allegation, it is important to avoid presenting conjecture as fact or to identify private individuals in ways that invite mob action. The correct path is to encourage those with first-hand knowledge to speak to the authorities and, where appropriate, to cooperate with sworn statements. Investigators can then act on probable cause rather than hearsay. We must also consider the human cost. Whether the claim proves true or false, it has real consequences for Summer's parents, any intermediaries named, and the broader community. The family has been living an unbearable public ordeal for years. New allegations reopen wounds and can re-traumatize children, relatives, and neighbors. Responsible reporting recognizes that any publicized allegation carries downstream effects and that the priority remains finding the child and ensuring safety for all involved. So, what do investigators do next, in practical terms, when faced with a claim like this? They will look for forensic anchors, call records, or text messages linking named individuals with dates and locations, financial records showing unusual transactions, vehicle movements captured on tolls, surveillance cameras, or license plate readers, eyewitnesses who can place a specific person at a specific location, and any physical evidence at locations tied to the allegation. They will check CPS schedules and records to verify whether a visit was indeed planned for the dates mentioned. They will also assess the credibility of the sources. Do they have direct knowledge? Are they relaying secondhand information? Do they have motives to fabricate? And can their statements be corroborated under oath? For those watching and wanting to help, the single most constructive step is straightforward. Pass any specific, verifiable information to law enforcement. If you have messages, call logs, or other tangible evidence related to the alleged dates or named individuals, preserve those items and provide them to investigators. Avoid posting unverified screenshots or accusations on public forums where they can be misinterpreted or used to intimidate. In other words, be a careful witness, not a broadcast judge. In closing, the allegation that Summer Wells was sold as collateral for a drug debt is among the most serious and troubling claims to emerge in this case. It demands a full, methodical investigative response, and it requires public restraint until evidence validates or refutes it. At the moment, the claim is an allegation, potentially testable, potentially explosive, but not yet proven. If anything in this account can be documented and verified, it must be turned over to the authorities immediately so it can be evaluated under oath and with forensic rigor. Until then, the responsible posture for the community, the media, and concerned individuals is to prioritize corroboration over conjecture, support investigative work rather than substitute for it, and keep the focus where it belongs. Finding Summer and ensuring that justice, if wrongdoing occurred, is pursued with the care and precision it deserves.